Well, today is the day. Today is tax day here in Portugal. I'm Josh with Expats Everywhere.
And I'm Kalie. We're going to talk about Portuguese taxes and why not to procrastinate like we did. Okay, so we need to give you a little bit of background of our story so that you can understand what filing taxes look like for us.
And so to reach these goals, we're going to tell you what we did.
The first and probably the most important thing to know is that you have to file taxes here in Portugal.
You either file as a regular tax resident or under the NHR scheme. Now, we're going to explain the NHR scheme a little bit later.
To do anything financial in Portugal, you have to have a NIF number. Now, we had a nightmare with ours because of when we came in. We're going to put a link in the description, though, that's going to make it so much easier for you guys. So what happened with us is we could get our NIF when we got here, but we got locked out of our NIF portal because they sent a code to the fiscal representative, and he, in the mail, was not getting this code, and they wouldn't change the mailing address, so we could never get into our NIF portal.
Okay, so the year your CEF residency is confirmed starts your fiscal year. Now, we arrived here in October of 2020, but we didn't have our CEF appointment until January of 2021.
Now, why is this important? Remember we talked about procrastinating. Well, this gave us a whole year and a half to figure this stuff out. So why is that a bad thing? Because we had a whole year and a half to figure this out, and what did we do? We procrastinated.
Yep.
December 2021, we hit the panic button.
Yeah, we absolutely did. So what happened for us is we were traveling at the end of December, kind of into January, and we thought, what's the end of the year? We've got to do something. What is it? Shoot, it's the NHR registration. We're gonna be late. So we jumped on phone calls with a couple of different tax specialists that are here in Portugal to figure out how filing was, what we needed to do. And that's when we found out that we needed to go ahead and get registered by end of March. Now, that was a huge relief to us. It meant that we had time. Now, we had more time to procrastinate, which was not cool, but that's what we did. Okay, so what is NHR? Well, let me explain that. It's a tax regime that offers residents and investors reduced tax rates and exemptions on some taxes. Now, to be eligible, you will need to meet the following criteria. You have to become a fiscal resident or a resident in Portugal for tax purposes. You haven't been on the NHR scheme before, as it's non-renewable, and you haven't been a resident for tax purposes in Portugal for the past 5 years.
We did a video about NHR. We'll put that link in the description below, and then we'll also have it in a playlist at the end of this video.
And now we hit our next roadblock.
Okay, so we have NHR, we're good with that, but we have to file, and our apartment is not registered the correct way for us to file taxes here. Finanças with a lowercase f in Portuguese just means finances, but the proper noun, finanças, was the name used in the 90s that is now the AT. It's the government agency responsible for taxes. While you'll still see the sign for finanças offices all over Portugal, it's the AT and sort of like our IRS in the US. There are certainly nuances, but we don't need to get into that.
So how did we solve this problem? Well, we talked to our accountant, Matilde, who found out about the problem initially, and we spoke to our landlords. And our landlords probably ran into this issue because when they bought the place, it was listed as AL, alojamento local. So it has a different tax rate than it would if it was a long-term residence. So we needed it to be certified at Finanças for long-term residents.
All right, so will we have to move? This was the main thing, and we weren't sure, so we started looking at apartments, and we did a video about that. We'll put that in the description as well. But we had to have a chat with our landlord and see what was doable.
So if we don't get registered with NHR, then essentially we're staring at double the tax rate than we had anticipated. So we're talking about owing a lot of money.
All right, to spare you the ugly details because, you know, well, bureaucracy. What we did is we went back and forth with our landlord. He was fine with changing it, which was great. He's a good guy. They just had to change the contract, and the contract had this and then this, and so it was back and forth. Anyway, March 31st, NHR, thanks Matilde, we made it. For those of you who don't have as many problems as us, NHR can be as simple as doing it yourself on your NIF portal.
All right, so now we have NHR. We got that done by one deadline, the end of March, but now we have another looming deadline, which is the end of June. Great.
As Americans, we always have to file taxes in the US. We use a certain tax specialist, which is super important because once you're an expat, you have different exclusions, different dates, things like that. So make sure you get yourself a really good accountant that knows expat accounting.
All right, so we reached out to Steven, who was filing our American taxes starting in about April. Now, Why is this important? Well, it's because we needed to finish our US taxes before passing them over to Matilde to do our Portuguese taxes.
The US and Portugal have a double taxation treaty, so you want your accountants in Portugal and the US to talk to each other so you're not taxed on the same thing twice.
In 2021, we had sold a property in the United States, so that had capital gains implications. We also have some rental properties, so we have rental income. Kalie has a 1099, and then we have Expats Everywhere, so that's some self-employment income. This is honestly where giving broad tax advice is dangerous. There are things like crypto, trading stocks, pensions, all sorts of different types of income sources that you can have that are gonna get treated differently in NHR or in your US taxes or whatever. So it's really important to go ahead and speak with a specialist that knows this stuff, and they can tell you really what you're looking at more closely.
Finally, after all the back and forth, we were able to submit our US taxes on June 22nd and have those paid by June 29th. Now remember, we have a June 30th deadline. So in the meantime, we were talking numbers with Matilde and we were able to file our Portugal taxes by June 30th. Realistically, we would have liked to have done this sooner. It's not ideal to be super stressed and procrastinate, so just some advice, try to get going on this a little earlier.
Literally June 30th is when we filed our taxes. So we got that done. Woohoo, we're done, right? Wrong. Now what do we have to do? We have to wait. We have to wait to find out how much we owe.
So we asked Matilde what to expect. How much do we owe? When will we know?
Now, Matilde was honest with us, guys. She told us that she doesn't really know how much we would owe, and she didn't really know when we would find out. She did say that it should be a couple of weeks, and we just kind of sat around nervously. We were glad to have it done, but we also kind of sat around nervously like, oh my gosh, how much are we going to owe?
So Matilde said that it would come in a couple of weeks by mail.
By mid-July, our fate had come in a small envelope from AT. Well, funny enough, good old CTT put it in our neighbor's mailbox, but thankfully our neighbor, who knows us,
Thanks, Eduardo,
gave it to us, and he told us in passing that he'd put it in our mailbox. Could you imagine if he didn't actually do that, or we didn't know our neighbor?
We open the envelope. Okay, not bad. But how do we pay this and be done for 2022 at least? A few days later, we had travel plans and would be leaving Portugal. In true fashion, we will wait and figure out where and how to pay this after we get back.
We arrived back in Portugal in the middle of August and know we have until August 31st to pay it. Plenty of time, right?
And here we are today in the comfort of our home, paying our tax bill online.
It's actually all too easy. All we have to do is go on the Millennium app. There's a tab called Public Services. You need your reference number that they give you and the amount, and then you hit pay. Now, one important thing is don't wait to the last minute because they get a lot of people who do that, so traffic is really high.
All right, guys, we've created a playlist just for you if you're interested in taxes. The first one is about taxes here in Portugal under the NHR system. We've asked the top 10 questions to a tax specialist. The second video is for Americans specifically paying their taxes back in the US. Now, let's get moving. Bye.